The United States citizens given a constitutional right to vote in our elections. It's hard to imagine how the passing of the SAVE Act would help you on those constitutional rights.
If we make it easy to cheat, then your constitutionally protected right to vote will mean less and less with each passing election.
It says, I do solemnly swear, under penalty of perjury, I am a United States citizen.
According to my colleague's logic, a signature is all the identification you need. We have a constitutionally protected right to bear arms, and yet when you purchase a firearm, guess what you have to do? You have to produce identification. The signature wouldn't do it there, and that's a constitutionally protected right. This is a constitutionally protected right, but we're still making it, yes, easy to vote and hard to cheat. You've got to have both. You don't get that if you have a mere signature.
The Heritage Foundation found that in the United States of America, that non-citizen voter fraud is basically 0.7
I think she said, and I quote, very, 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 very little fraud in elections. Election fraud is extremely difficult to detect and therefore rarely prosecuted. We've got this known vulnerability in our laws here, and heaven help us all if we don't acknowledge the vulnerabilities that we face and take reasonable steps to close those loopholes.
It is about disenfranchising millions of people and making it very hard for them to vote.
You want to change that sentence to make it correct? Well, it could be a whole lot of people who are not citizens. The only people we don't want voting are those who are not citizens and are not eligible to vote. That's all this does. Easy to vote, hard to cheat.
You have to start producing additional paperwork. My colleagues would like to make you find all sorts of documentations in the most unworkable chaos I have ever seen in a system put in a bill.
If you're already registered to vote, this doesn't undo your existing voter registration, but it would apply to new voter registrations. If you move, you register to vote in a new state or a new precinct, and you've got to establish a new voter registration file after this becomes law, then yeah, you'd have to do that. But again, if you are an American who has ever had a job anywhere, started any new job at any point in your career with a new employer, you've already had to supply the same documentation.
Neither the president nor Congress should be in the business of micromanaging elections. I subscribe to my party's fundamental and historic commitment to local control. It is a time-honored Republican principle that government closest to the people is best. This is importantly includes the conduct of elections, end quote. So a demagogue or somebody in the level of government cannot force the federal government to say who's eligible to vote and who's not eligible to vote.
This objection is coming from the same party that no less than 5 years ago, under the auspices of a bill commonly known at the time as H.R. 1, tried to undertake a wholesale takeover of our federal voting and election system. Anytime any voting jurisdiction in the United States wanted to redistrict, they'd have to go to a political appointee at the U.S. Department of Justice and obtain pre-clearance. This is the same party that's now making the federalism objection to this. While we're on this federal objection to this, let's remember the whole reason this is necessary in the first place is because of an existing federal law passed in 1993 by Congress, the National Voter Registration Act.
The notion that we would turn this over to DHS is preposterous. In the notion that I had a constituent who basically got denied a Social Security check because someone said he was dead, even though he went to the federal building and said, I'm not dead. It took him months. Now, let's say that the federal government says the same thing about you and the voter rolls on Election Day. What are you going to do then?
The Department of Homeland Security wielding personal information. Well, if that's the case, there are all kinds of things. And if that's on the table, I mean, a lot of Americans don't much like how much personal information the IRS has. That gets leaked sometimes. A lot of people that don't like how much personal information can be found in the databases that are used in connection with the background checks that one has to go through when purchasing a gun. The fact is, the government does have that information. Why not allow the government to use that information lawfully to make sure that those who have a particular right are the only ones who are allowed to wield it so that it doesn't get cheapened or diluted or bastardized by those who would flagrantly violate the law?
This bill also has a private right of action to say that you can sue them on a private right of action. So now we're going to create all of this chaos and mischief at a level when somehow Homeland Security, which they've gotten it wrong before, now all of a sudden you're going to get it wrong again.
That private right of action exists under previously enacted laws. But there are existing federal laws that make that exact private right of action available. And all this does is it extends it to the obligations that arise under the Save America Act. And those two are generous. They are generous to those state officials that are complying with them. If somebody identifies a problem with the way that the law is being implemented, if there is a notice requirement to the state elections official in question, and it gives a certain period of time, they have the ability to cure the harm or to make the argument back as to why they're not, in fact, violating it. So there's nothing scary about this private right of action.
I'm standing up for vote by mail. Your last election had 84% turnout in the state of Utah. That's what we strive for in the United States of America, a voting system where everybody participates.
We've got data from studies, a number of different studies, showing that in states that have adopted voter ID laws, you don't drive down voter participation. In some cases, it goes up. It works out perfectly well. We need not, we ought not, we must not fear this.